people. Welcome to the Sweet Madness podcast, and I'm really happy to be back today with an old friend of mine who I've known for, I don't know, I'd say about maybe 10 plus years doing, theater, and I will let him introduce himself now. So,
Hello, people. My name is Jonathan Palmiotti. I am he, him pronouns. I'm a host for a podcast called An Artist's Way of Healing. You may or you may not have heard of it. I've known Amanda for a very long time. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's really great being in this room and talking about art and theater.
we did a little swap. We did a podcast.
That's
swap.
it. Yeah, you were on mine, and now I'm here. I'm present, and I'm ready. Whatever you throw at me, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
The hard questions.
Give them to me.
So we met doing community theater.
Yes.
Do you remember what show was the first one we did together?
I know it was at FSF Synagogue of Flushing, which is no longer, which now is Royal Star Theater, Community Theater, right?
Yeah, we branched out, and then
I don't exactly remember the actual show that we.
Was it Gypsy?
Oh, was it Gypsy?
I think it might have been Gypsy.
I did one show there, but then was there another show before that?
I don't know.
In another place. Did you do Mary Lewis Academy?
I didn't do Mary Lewis Academy, no.
Okay.
Hairspray at FSF was my first ever show in 2011.
Okay, so
Yes.
then maybe it was Gypsy.
Okay, then it was Gypsy.
Yeah.
Yay!
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Awesome. So so you studied theater in college? Is that
Yeah.
what you did?
So what I did at so I went to a few universities. So originally what I did was I started at Queensborough Community College for my associate's degree. I did a double major in music and theater.
Okay.
There was no specific musical theater track at Queensborough Community College, and so I wasn't able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to do both music and theater so much because I am originally a piano player first before musical theater. And
I did not know that.
yeah, and I started piano at the age of 11, and I was taught by my cousin, Chris, and I loved music. I was the type of child growing up where I was an introvert. I was not very social. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. It was hard for me to make friends. I was bullied a lot. I was picked on. Music was kind of that almost escape for me to kind of just be myself and be in the presence of myself where I can go to somewhere to escape and live in a reality where I felt like I was welcome, where I can express myself in a way that I actually knew how. I'm still not great at being a speaker, a public speaker. It kind of teeters the line in regards to why do I do theater if I'm not really a great public speaker. But the difference is you're living in a different world. You're living in a world where you are someone else for a change, and you're exploring that. Then ultimately, once I got into high school, in high school I actually did my first ever show, Bye Bye Birdie, in my sophomore year of high school. I originally thought I want to be, the film actor. Like every single kid growing up, they wanted to be a film
They want to be
star.
on TV or in a movie. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then when I did the show for the first time, I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? This is going to be my starting place or whatever. And then ultimately, I started to realize, there are other people that are kind of just like me, in the sense where they're weird, they're fun, they can be themselves, and there's no judgment in a place like this. Where yes, there are people that make judgment of people, but it was almost in a way where I can act weird and quirky, and it'll just be fine because everybody is that, and that's how people open up and express their characters or do whatever or make friends or however. So, I started to realize oh wow, maybe it's not just about film for me. It's more about the escape. And that's
And the community.
and the community and how I can really just be vulnerable in my own way, I guess is the word.
Yeah. It's a freedom.
Yeah.
It's a freedom that we don't really get in the real world. I had a director in high school who used to say, "You're theater kids. You're in the land of misfit toys."
Yeah.
Like but the land of misfit toys is so beautiful because everybody is accepting of everybody's differences, and that's a big. I know that's a big message for me, especially what I do with my children's book. In the dance world alone, it's like a whole different level of judgment and expectations. But in the theater, I also feel like this is part of your mission with your podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into
Yeah.
that actually
Yeah.
though. But essentially, so after that, that was actually part of school. That was when I was going to Holy Cross High School as a sophomore, and that was like my first experience in theater. Then I was like, oh wow, this is something I really like doing. So then I had a friend who was actually on my podcast, Andrew Lai. He's like, oh, I know of,
Andrew.
yeah. And he's like, oh, we've been friends since high school. I met him in high school. He's a year older than me. And I said, like, listen, Andrew, I really like this. This is like something that's really fun. Maybe I can actually continue this. And then he referred me to another community theater group. I'm not sure whether or not they're still active, but the Andrean Players. I did my first ever community theater production in the production of Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh.
And when I did that, that was a different experience, and more of an experience that I can even grow and like open up even more, because not only there were people that were my age, but it was also people that were adults and like people that were like, they had all different types of experience in the theater, and like, I learned so much from that experience. And from then on, I was like, oh my God, I really enjoy this. So like from year after year, and for like a couple of years, I continued to do theater at the Andrean Players, and it almost felt like a home. And, I really enjoyed that home feeling. And I think right then and there is when I actually started to like say, okay, maybe this is something that I'm possibly looking at professionally. Then, fast forward, I go to college for music and theater, did all that whole thing. Fast forward through Queensborough Community College, I ended up going to my BFA in musical theater performance, and that was really strong. That really kind of hit home in regards to the real life of doing theater. And obviously, we could probably go into this if you want or not. It's up to you. But that was actually the point in my life where I felt legit like I was doing all the things in regards to that was doing so much like work, and I was taking 23 credits, and this is actually one of the things I prepared in regards to what you asked me to prepare for this. And this was a very emotional, really hard time, because I was taking 23 credits every single semester. I was doing a show. I worked weekends at a gym to basically have some income for myself. I was going to school starting from 8 a.m. in the morning all the way until sometimes 2, 3 in the morning, just taking classes, going to rehearsal, and then just rehearsing for like the next day for class. And it was just so much to the point where in my final year I had a mental breakdown in front of my teacher. And I literally, it happened after a point where I presented something in class and it was not good. And the teachers at the school that I went to, they were very, very tough. And, they made it known that like, listen, this is like a serious thing if you're going to get into it.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. Not a lot of like, people who don't do theater, they don't realize how much discipline it takes.
Yeah.
To be a working actor and take those night shifts at whatever restaurant or bar and then audition every single day at 6 a.m. Like, they don't realize the discipline and the craft that you have to put into it outside of when you're actually auditioning and performing.
Right.
It's a whole lifestyle. It's not just, okay, do a job, have fun, and play, and become a different person. Like, there are techniques you have to learn, and it's a lot of hard work. So,
Yep.
like, I feel you on your burnout.
And
And I'm sorry to hear about.
no,
you know,
it's
your
just
your
it's
breakdown.
it's literally. But the thing is, I think I needed that to kind of relax, because I'm that type of person where I don't like to show emotion that much. I'm very much stuck inside. Everything's internal for me, and like I don't like to show emotion. I don't like to. I'm not usually someone that cries a lot, but legit, like something came over me to the point where it just kind of started coming out, and I was like, I'm so exhausted. I'm so overworked that it just happened. And then, I guess I kind of needed that to move forward and kind of just take a step and breathe.
I totally
Anyway,
get that.
yeah, so that was like
Yeah.
really a traumatic thing. Then let's fast forward a little bit more into my future. I started to doing the thing of performing, like after graduation in 2015, I did it. And I enjoyed it, but I started to realize, you know what, like, I started to kind of think more in regards to my life, where I wanted to go, what direction I wanted to go into, and whether that was to actually continue performing or do I want to, uh, take it another direction of like being on the business side of the arts because there was a lot of things going on in my life that I don't really want to like get into a little bit as much,
That's
but
fine.
I started to realize like I still want to be in the arts in some capacity. And how can I do that in a way where I can do it, but not feel like I'm just giving up the arts in a full capacity of life, like just completely throwing it away.
It's a part of who
Es-
you are.
Especially of like everything I learned, I didn't want to just throw it out the window. So I said, you know what, let me go for my master's in arts administration. So I went to Baruch College. I got my master's in arts administration, and then I am now a representative promoting arts advocacy at a specific job that I work at. And that kind of helped me, really still dive into my craft of arts and like, experience art with the people that I work with every single day.
Where I'm everything that you're saying resonates with me, but with like teaching and
Yeah.
and dance and where I'm at now. It's so weird. It's so interesting how people can have like totally different stories, but just relate to each other. I totally like understand and totally empathize with what you're saying.
And that's so interesting you say
Yeah.
that because our friend Andrew that we were just talking about,
Yes.
he said something in my podcast. If anybody's interested in listening, it's an artist's way of healing.
That is an artist's way of healing.
You actually have a website also, www.anartistswayofhealing.com, or we have an Instagram or a Facebook if you're interested in checking us out. But he said something that was really interesting in the episode that I recorded with him, was that when you have a conversation with someone that's just random and you have nothing in common with that person, there's nothing really to talk about, and you kind of just do one word and you try to develop a conversation with that person, but sometimes just nothing comes out, or like the conversation just kind of one lines.
Yeah.
But if you actually have things to talk about and you have something in common, those boundaries, they just come
Yeah,
down.
it's like also kind of like the fear to be vulnerable and like actually let your real self through.
Right, because then you start to think like, am I going to get judged or whatever, because I like this or that or whatever. And so it's just kind of a way to relate to someone and not feel, going back to my earlier thing I was saying about theater, like I feel comfortable in the space and like being weird and acting quirky in front of people, like with my first theater experience when I was a sophomore in high school. It's kind of like the same idea. Like you get to feel weird or quirky in the thing that you like.
Yeah.
And
You get to be yourself.
yeah, and you get to talk and
Yeah.
you get to continue the conversation, go on and on and on and on and on until, whatever. So that was the thing with that. So, through this experience and then through a life experience of something that actually happened within my own life, that was really traumatic. And I don't want to really get into that, but
Yeah.
I started to reflect on my life within this instance that happened a couple of years ago that I'm mentioning, where it was not a good end result, and there's still no end result to it. But I started to reflect on myself, like, did I do anything wrong? Was it me? And as much as I thought about it that way, there's always two sides to every story. So I get that. But then through all that reflection, I started to think, like, I want to start being a different person to people. I want to be kind. I want to be generous. I want to be more outgoing and thoughtful to other people's feelings and what the scenarios they're going through. Because in that conversation or whatever that happened between that person and I, it was just kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you don't know the other person's side of the story and you're just kind of accusing someone of doing something, it starts to, like, you don't get to say your side, so or
There's no communication happening for perspective.
right. And so, like,
Yeah.
and again, going back to the thing, I'm an introvert. So, like,
Right.
I prefer to actually walk away from the conversation. And this is kind of something that I was talking about within our episode.
Yeah.
But anyway, going forward, this kind of created the idea of the podcast, because originally the podcast was not something to, like, make money. It wasn't something to be like, hey, here I am, after so many years of being out of the theater. It was not any of that. The real reason was because I wanted to spread a message to be kind, to encourage people to be kind, and to tell people that every single person in this world matters. They may not be telling you exactly up to your face, like, what you did wrong or what you said, or how to react or whatever it is. But you always want to think about their side of the story, and think about you're not the only one that's having specific situations in their life, and you don't know what those situations are. And so that kind of gave me the idea to think about, like, no matter what situation you're in, even if someone is, they're not your favorite person or whatever, you don't know what's going through. And so that
Right.
kind of developed the whole an artist's way of healing thing. Now it's kind of like, so now that we have part 1 released and part 2 and 3 are coming in 2025, I started to kind of, like, think about, like, what the future of an artist's way of healing is. And I have really many things planned for an artist's way of healing, but I don't really want to go into it now, because it's
No,
going to be...
don't. Don't.
But it kind of, like, started making me think, like, yeah, this started as this one mission to kind of spread the message. But then I started to realize, like, this could be something that can just go in many different directions. And
Just
that's
like-
where we are now.
Yeah, just like kind of like our episode, I talk about change a lot. Everything morphs, and everything sort of, like, kind of morphs into what it can become and what it ultimately will become. And it's just like with the Sweet Madness podcast too. Like, I have so many things that I, like, want to incorporate in there, and everything has layers, and it goes back to people, right? And people have layers, and from what I'm gathering is, yes, spread kindness, which is great. You don't know everybody's side of the story. You don't know what everybody's going through. Even if you work with a partner, you cannot read their mind, right? So why are we getting so worked up about things we don't like in other people? And also, if we feel like we're being mistreated, maybe just communicate, but also keep in mind the perspective of we don't know. So maybe there's a part of us that cannot take everything personally.
Right.
Because what it comes down to is, it's not personal in terms of, it's personal to the other person. It's not personal to you. They're not purposely doing this unless they are, unless they make the choice to be malicious, to do a certain thing to you. But most things, like 99% of the time, if a person acts a certain way, it's not personal to you. It's what's going on inside them.
In a separate conversation
And-
that had.
Right, yeah. And it's like...
Or whatever is going on in their life.
whatever's going on with their life, and if and your work is to try to not take that personally.
Yeah. I always think about, though, the fact that words are very powerful.
Yes.
It's a very powerful thing. And a lot of people, my wife always says, like, be careful what you say. Like, if we're, like, having an argument or whatever, like, she's like, be careful what you say, because you can't take those words back.
Right.
So
There's also a flip side to that, what you say, you're not responsible for triggering the other person. The other person is responsible for managing their triggers, because they're going through their own
what I
pattern.
mean is, though, like,
Yeah.
if you're having a conversation, or if you had something going on like in an outside thing that you're bothered about, and then you try to like take it out on someone else, like, it just, don't let that extra from whatever happened outside feed into something where someone is genuinely trying to like help you, or be there for you in the sense, as opposed to just taking your anger out on that person.
Get out of your head and try to actually see what the other person is trying to do.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of getting at in regards to like watch what you say to someone, because
Yeah.
you don't want to regret it, because like there is a fine line in regards to like do you want people's opinion on something, or do you want to just vent to someone without them saying something?
That's very
And that's
important.
something separate. I know that's whatever, but
Everything is in context.
Yeah.
Like everything we're talking about now, like you're thinking of certain situations, I'm thinking of certain situations, and it's all in the context of our lives.
yeah.
And a lot of people forget that, like, everybody thinks, like, no, this is fine. That was a loud slap. I'm sorry, everybody. I was like, it's like, no, like, this is finite. This is black. This is white. And it goes back to, like, what I say. I'm like, no, there's a touch of gray in everything. Some of the blacks are lighter than other blacks. Some of the whites are darker than other whites, because there's context is everything. And my brother is studying law right now, and even within the law, there's context. And a lot of people, like, we, as a society, we've been told things have to be a certain way, and we like that familiarity. So for us to think outside of the box and be like, oh, wait, but what about this? What about this point of view? What about this thing that contributes to the situation? What about this other thing? It gets confusing, and people are not comfortable with that. And it's just something that does frustrate me, because when I'm trying to talk about certain things, people get into that, pattern of, no, it's supposed to be this way, so that means it's right. And it's like, if it's supposed to be this way and it makes you feel crappy, why is that right? Why can't we change it? You know?
Or the other thing is just like, because someone does something a specific way,
Right.
that's the way it has to be done. And what you're saying in regards to that, but also if you don't do it that way, it doesn't mean that
it's wrong.
And that I hate you, and that like we're gonna have a fight now because we just disagreed about something. It's just like, because the thing is, I think a lot of people, I mean, and this is not really a lot of people's fault in regards to it, like society is in itself.
Everybody's a victim of the system.
Yeah, society in itself is kind of like a thing where like everything trends, and everything is like, or everybody kind of acts a certain way in the sense of how they have to be defensive for themselves. And just because someone says, I'm this, and then someone else says, I'm that, then all of a sudden, like, your friendship of 20 years just goes away because someone has different viewpoints of something. And to an extent, I understand people's things, because these things are very real things.
It comes down to it comes down to values and how you view other people now.
Right.
In terms of like the subject of what these two parties are talking about, right?
Right.
But I see what you're saying, and it's what I say. I was like, why we have a conversation about it. Have the tough conversation. But the problem with having the tough conversation, it's like you said, everybody's really, really defensive automatically, and they're not open to hearing the other side, and they're not giving what they want. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. And it's tough. I'm not saying it's not tough, but because we've been drilled, like you said, to act a certain way and think certain things are right, and then therefore just...
It's like a trend.
Yeah, and then therefore just thinking everybody else who has a different opinion is wrong. Opinions are opinions. They're not facts, right? Opinions are opinions. And with their decisions, again, there's context. You don't know the experience someone had in their life. Like, I know someone who had a completely different experience that I have in terms of societal standards, right? We are, like, if it's a different sex or the same sex, everybody has a different experience,
Yep.
and their lives shape their thoughts as well. So I feel like as people, we forget that. Like, we forget that people literally are living so many different lives just because of their experiences. So, with your experiences and like what you want to do with the podcast, is there anything that really, really is important to you that you haven't already said about the podcast and why
Yeah.
why you're putting this out there?
Right. So, like as I was mentioning in regards to what the mission is, the mission was originally to be, for myself was to be kind, to spread kindness, and to acknowledge that people are going through many different things that you may very well not know behind closed doors, and they might be thinking certain things, and basically the purpose of the podcast was to dive into the fact that arts, in a sense, because that's what I'm into and that's what my whole life was around, and that's how I survived, even growing up, starting theater for the very first time, as like I was saying, that safe zone for myself. How the arts can actually help people heal from traumatic experiences in their life, like any sort of death in the family, or they're going through a lot of depression, or because of a specific instance in their life, or relationships that are toxic, whatever it is. It doesn't really like matter what it is, but and I don't want to actually subject it to just specifically like performing in visual art, because art is huge, and I kind of consider art even as big as like the human body, where in regards to exercise, even that's an art. Like, you see these people, they like work up to do like they work up to do like a marathon, and it's just like amazing because there's a form to do a specific exercise. There's an art, but yeah, like in general, like culinary, that's an art. The art of
Yes.
yoga, the art of meditation, anything that is in regards to the word art, I don't feel like should be excluded from this thing.
You could argue that everything is art. It matters on your perspective, and art to me is like creativity, and everybody has creativity.
Yeah.
Everyone has creativity, whether they realize it or not.
So I essentially I want to I usually what I currently have been going on through, and like I do have some solo episodes, but I've been inviting guest artists on, and I do have some really exciting stories that are coming on. Also, some very serious stories. And part two, I just want to say, even though I'm not going to reveal too much about it, it gets very, very, very real.
That's refreshing.
And there are some very, very real situations of healing that have come on for the guest artists that are coming on to the podcast. Almost to the point where like there's just no words to even say, but to just listen, because this has been like a very dangerous journey for me. I kind of consider it too, because people are opening up to me in a sense where they normally might not even want to, and when they open up, they're trusting the world and trusting me, because they're getting on this podcast to share their story. But the point of the podcast is not to just be on the podcast. The point of the podcast is so you can tell your story, so that people are currently struggling can relate to those instances
And feel
feel like, okay, you know what? It's not the end.
No.
There's a way to get through it, and this is what X person did.
yeah, it's to make them feel less alone, or a stepping stone to what their next step is. Yeah.
And I always try to
Yeah.
like say, do you want me to say like your, not only your credentials, but like your not contact info, but like your website or whatever.
Yeah.
Because perhaps someone is going through that specific challenge, and they really say like they want to reach out and say like, how did you do it? What can you tell me that's going to help me? And that's what I want. I want people to actually feel comfortable reaching out to these guest artists, just like you have in your mission for this for Sweet Madness, and on your website you say like, I want to, do you want to talk? Reach out. Like I want to have a conversation with you. it's kind of the same type of idea
Mm-hmm.
where, yeah, you can reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to always make connection or
Mm-hmm.
talk to you in regards to that. And there's so many things I have planned to do that. I recently actually started on Facebook something called an artist way of healing safe space, where
Mm.
people is on Facebook, and it's literally for anybody that's in the arts. Should they want to join, I pose a question every single week where people can relate in regards to healing and how they got into the arts and what has the arts done for them to help heal. And
Mm-hmm.
anything that we talk about in the actual group
Mm-hmm.
is sacred. It's not to be discussed outside of the group, and it's something where people can come to have a safe space to just relay their thoughts.
That's really great.
Um,
I'm not on Facebook anymore, but that's really
yeah.
great.
So
It's
so
really, really great.
it's kind of come to that, you know.
Yeah.
But I really hope it changes people's lives. I mean, I'm not really expecting any comments back to it, but if it does, great, you know.
Yeah. You want to create a community where people feel accepted and able to share and not being judged for it, like
Yeah.
the theater did for you. So, do you have a story of um, healing that you've had, or a specific instance in theater that healed you?
Well,
One that like flashes out at you?
yeah, well, the one that, and for those who actually haven't listened to my solo first intro episode for An Artist's Way of Healing was, and this is something that, you know, this is going back to when I was in fifth grade, sixth grade. Um, I had a learning disability when I was growing up. In fifth grade, I basically almost failed out of fifth grade because I was reading at a second grade reading level, and and I was around the time of 11 years old, like I said, when I was taking piano for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and you know I didn't have any friends. When I almost fell out of fifth grade, I had to transfer to another school because I was told that I had to be in special education. Um, and then on top of that, and what happened with me was really the fact that uh, I would look at a paragraph in like a class to read something, and I would read the paragraph fine, but when the teacher told me, okay, can you explain to me what that paragraph was about, I would have no idea.
A processing. A
So I
processing
literally would
disability?
not comprehend what I just
Yeah.
read.
Okay.
So that kind of triggered into getting zeros on all my tests and failing because I was not comprehending what that information actually was doing
Mm-hmm.
for me. So I went to special education in middle school, and it was MS 67 in Douglaston, and I was still struggling, and I was told at that point that I had to have a hearing aid in my ear because it's almost as if something like the brain was not connecting to whatever I was reading
Mm-hmm.
or in general of like learning. And so like, you know, I just remember like hysterical crying. I remember like, you know, really, really like upset, like I don't want to wear this, you know, I remember already have like these self-conscious issues of being made fun of. I don't have any friends. You know, this is just going to be the icing on the cake of me just being like somewhere dark. Um, but then they ended up giving me this thing where it was still like a hearing device, but it was something that actually sat on my desk, and the teacher would wear like a microphone, and it would kind of speak directly at me, and it was like a box that just sat on my desk, a rectangular box, and it had a battery and whatever. So it was basically the next best thing. That's what they kind of provided me because they kind of felt bad. They felt bad for me that, you know, I was really upset about it. So I had that. Then, you know, basically I tell this story because then eventually that ended up helping me. In addition to having a speech pathologist come to my house 3 times a week to kind of help me with my helping. And that I felt like the speech pathologist coming to my house was even more effective than, you know, the actual program that I was doing at school, because it was just like a one-on-one thing. I remember actually having so much confidence after having the speech pathologist come to my house, because I'm not a writer, but I did write a story that I thought was like a children's story that I still have like the papers of.
Mm.
It was called Henry the Wizard, and I started writing this story, and it kind of just made me feel like, oh wow, like I have the capability to understand what I'm writing, but also understanding, because I'm writing this story and I'm living in this world, because I was always a fantasy person. I'm interested in like Harry Potter, Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings, and this is kind of something that kind of expanded my imagination. So, but then also, like, because I got into piano and at 11, I started to kind of tie in all of these fantasy type things and like being interested in playing like the actual songs on the piano.
Yeah.
And it kind of just helped me get through my like childhood and adolescence.
Did it help your disability in any way? Because like reading music is its own language. So did it sort of like spark your disability to like keep like for you to keep working on it
Yeah.
without you noticing?
The story, or
Like writing the story, letting yourself open up to the creativity, and then like learning how to read music and play piano. Like I would just think that in itself kind of like through osmosis kind of would make, like I'm asking if like it helped you
yeah, I mean,
progress with working on your disability.
it sure gave me confidence to actually excel.
Okay.
Because, you know, I think at that point, and like any kid, they want the satisfaction of like people to really kind of get through life at that point. So, you know, here I am, like someone that I was like screaming, crying, like, Mom, don't tell anyone that I have this hearing aid sitting on my desk, or hearing device sitting on my desk, or don't tell anybody that I'm in special ed. I'm very embarrassed. So as I grew up and I started to realize, like, you know, I have this creative imagination where I'm expressing myself through this story. I'm expressing myself through the piano. You know, it kind of just grew me, you know, emotionally. Even though I still couldn't actually express what I wanted to people, because I, again, introvert, and again, not a very good speaker. It was allowing me to just develop myself. And, you know, it just comes, it came with the idea that, like, maybe there is a little bit more to me that I didn't realize.
Yeah.
And, you know, it kind of just, like, it was almost like this. So, you know, when you play the piano, for example, well, for me, this is how I felt. You know, if I was not able to talk to that childhood crush, or I did something that was very, like, I was very upset, I was able to kind of just use the music to kind of like grow in a sense where, like, I felt like that's how I was able to express exactly how I was feeling, whether that be like pounding on the keyboard and just playing something random. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it just developed me in the way that I can just express emotionally and take out some sort of frustration or emotion in a different way, because I was not able to hold a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with me, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was really.
I mean, like, listen, if you asked me this 15 years ago, I would probably not want to even talk about this.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
you know, you start to realize, you know, I have a 1-year-old now. Well, 2. Oh my gosh, no, he's going to be 2 tomorrow. I'm sorry.
He will be too when this episode airs.
And you know, that really changed my life when he was born. Changed my wife and I, like both of our lives. And you know, it starts to kind of, you start to take a different, real approach to life, and like you start to reflect, and you know, you want that child of yours to have the best life that they could possibly be and do, and just give them the best. And so what that ends up doing for me is that ends up making me reflect on my own life and how I was as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And say that it's okay for these emotions to come out, that it's okay to be whatever way it is. And you're just as unique and you're just as unique and special than anybody else out there, no matter who you are, what you are, and what
You're worthy.
right. And just because it takes you a little bit longer to learn something, or just because someone is in a wheelchair, or whatever, it does not matter. You're someone, and you're going to be just as worthy to do something great and special as someone that is just like you and me.
Yeah. Wow. Man.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, and that's
beautiful.
part of like what an artist's way of healing is.
Yeah.
So that it goes back to that. It's opportunities. And what I actually started to do. Sorry, and I know I've been talking for a long time, but I just
No,
want to
that's
say
okay. You're my guest on this episode.
I started to actually, and I don't know if you've been noticing it, but recently last week, in addition to everything that I'm posting about the podcast, I started to create stories every morning or every day
Yeah.
that basically starts with your daily reminder.
I have noticed it,
And-
and I think it's really sweet.
And I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about. Words are powerful to people.
Yes.
And people are looking for those outlets to just say that it's okay and to start their day with something that's going to say, I read that, maybe I'll take that and then propel that into my day.
And the more you see words that encourage you and validate you, because you are validated, your feelings are valid. They, whatever you've been going through, if it's a trauma cycle, if it's something that triggers you, like your emotions are emotions. Human beings are emotional beings. We make decisions based on emotion, but we justify with logic. And words specifically, something I did. I used to have a lot of problems with self-worth. I always used to think that I was not enough. I'm not worthy enough for anyone, specifically romantically, because of my weight and impossible societal standards on women and the constant contradiction it is to be a woman, and not to be accepted as the in-between and for all of the different layers. And so in the romantic world specifically, that's where I felt the least self-esteem, and it trickled into my confidence on a daily life when I was a kid. And only I would say last year or a little more than that, I started writing in my journal every night, ending my entry. I write in my journal every night regardless, but I ended my entries with first. And I noticed the shift because the more you repeat these words, and writing them down physically is just a whole other level of expressing things. So I would start with, you are worthy. Whatever it is. It could be love. It could be, the next project I'm auditioning for, or the next project that I want to do, or starting my own business and all of that stuff. I started writing, you are worthy. After months and months and months, it changed to, I am worthy. Then it changed to, I am worthy, underlined with the am. And now I have a totally different perspective of myself. And those are just I listen to a lot of psychologists and a lot of mental health podcasts, and I read a lot of mental health books and everything. The way you talk to yourself matters most. It is the voice that you will always hear. And a lot of people rely on that outside validation, kind of like what you're doing with stories, and it's great that you're doing that because people need to hear it. But once that outside validation kind of switches and becomes that internal validation, it's not validation anymore.
Yeah.
It's you. Like, how you talk to yourself matters. the voices in your head are voices in your head. And this is what meditation is based off of. Meditation is based to let the thoughts come and go. They're thoughts. They're not facts.
Right.
They're things that float by, and let them go, because the more you harp on them, the deeper you'll sink.
Yeah.
And it's very much an art form, like you were saying. It's so
It
difficult.
transforms you and it puts you in a
Yeah.
different level, like almost like a cloud base.
Yeah, it's very spiritual. I'm a very spiritual person, and I do meditate as often as I can. My morning routine has changed a little bit over the last year or so. It's been a tough year. A lot of outside things out of my control.
Yeah.
And a lot of my goal with the past year was being okay with not being in control.
Yeah.
Which is also a whole other thing that I could talk about, but I won't for time's sake. But it's interesting, and we're piggybacking off of different things and concepts because everything is connected. And a lot of people don't realize that. Everything is connected, and whether you're spiritual or, faith-based, there is something that you can go to, like your podcast, the Sweet Madness podcast, any kind of, books or anything, to find what you're looking for and
Right.
to help you. It doesn't have to be just one thing. It can be everything.
There's different outlets for people to
Yes.
just go to.
And it's
And
about
that's actually
finding what is good for you.
right. That's another thing that I actually I start to talk a little bit about in my next solo episode, which will be airing for part 2. And I'm not going to get too much into it because I want people to listen to it. I'm hoping people listen to it, but ultimately, like everybody, it doesn't matter. Like you're artists or not. Let's take the equation, like performing or artists, out of it. Everybody's going through a tough time in some capacity or at some point in their life. And that healing may not necessarily be the arts. It may not.
No.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Some people like to go to wrestling.
I know, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's theater. That's art too. But see,
It's all staged.
right? No, but like, or I don't know, like go to the Grand Canyon. Let's just be out there.
Nature is a huge outlet for people.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how it ties to art.
I know.
Because it's like scenery and like picture.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. But like golfing, okay, like or something like sports related, like going to work out at the gym. There is so many different ways to find healing, and it doesn't have to tie directly to the arts. Yeah, like the arts. I guess that the reason why people think about like the arts, or I think about the arts, is because when a lot of people go see an art thing, like the museum, like the MoMA, or like a show, they're escaping from whatever they're going through, and they're seeing another picture of life and how they're basically seeing something so that they can feel better about their own life, or maybe not feel better, but like also reflect about
It's
what.
a mirror.
Yeah.
It's a mirror.
So, and that goes back to relating and reflecting and like saying, oh,
And
I could relate to
perspective.
that story.
Yeah.
And that's how someone heals, and that's going back to an artist's way of healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a book that I really love, and it basically talks about creativity and how it's all interpretation. Because everybody perceives everything differently, and also, especially with art, and especially if it's a visual art or a film. I mean, I can think of like 3 movies off the top of my head that I know what their message is. I know what the artist's intention was with the film, but there are people who have totally different perceptions of it, and I have my own different perceptions of specific parts of films, parts of the films as well, because everybody looks at stuff differently.
Yeah.
And
They do.
it's beautiful. But if there is a purpose for it and to convey a certain message, it can be very, very frustrating. But I won't go into that. But it's just, it's beautiful that it can be, and it's up for interpretation.
Yeah, it
And
really is.
yeah, that's what modern poetry is too. Like,
Oh yeah, because if
yeah,
you actually read a poem, people, well, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, poem, or look at a painting on a wall, and or,
mm-hmm.
like that's abstract, for example.
Right.
It's like, oh, it kind of looks like this, or you
Mm-hmm.
kind of see this story, but then someone's like, oh, I see this story.
And half the time, the artist is like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that." You know.
Oh, I wrote a play based off the instance that I was referring to earlier that I don't want to get into,
Uh-huh.
and but it was kind of like that too. Like I was going through with my actors about like the underlying story about like how the actual characters are and what their personalities are,
Mm-hmm.
and then one of my actors was like, I forgot what he said, but he's like, well, what about this? And it kind of just like said, oh, I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
It was with the boat.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, is it?
Yeah.
That?
And I was like, it was with Matt DeSiena actually,
Yeah.
as my
Shout out to Matt. Hi, Matt.
yeah. So and I was like, oh, it was regarding like a monologue that he was talking about, and I just can't remember. But anyway,
Okay.
it just it made me think about it the story in a different way, and like, oh wow, like yeah,
Yeah.
that's true, and I can't for the life of me remember exactly what he said, but.
Mm.
It's just the fact of that people think of the point I'm trying to make is people think about things and realize things in a different way every single person that reads something
Mm-hmm.
or sees something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a similar experience. A play that was in the Queen's Play Festival in 2023. I wrote very specifically, but my actor, one of my actors, also brought up like, "Oh, what about this? What about am I XYZ?" And I was like, "Whoa, that's a whole different level. Yes, let's go with it. Let's try it." And it's just that willingness to try that I love
Right.
about me. I really do, especially when it comes to directing and when it comes to stories and art, because
Right.
that's the that's the that is creativity alive.
Yeah.
It's a discussion. It's not it's not black or white or even a certain
Whatever.
shade
Yeah.
of gray. It is the process of creating and discussing and making it something as extravagant as it could be. It's elevating it, you
Right.
know? And I find that so important, especially when I direct. I work with my actors. Yes, I have a certain vision, but I always, always, always am like, if you want to try something, do it. If I hate it, I'll let you know.
Right.
If it doesn't fit the vision, I'll let you know. But if it's veered off the path from the vision, but still fits the overall bigger picture of the production, why the heck not?
Why not?
Why not? You know,
Just
you never know what you can discover, and it comes down to curiosity, like
because
and
then they're
discovery.
exploring their art and
Yeah.
they're being it and it's actually really interesting how important that is, because I did a production of Rent at CW Long Island University Post, and the director I was working with
Yeah.
was so set in this. I kind of thought about it as like a small vision. I guess that's as a director. This is what my thing. And
He was very specific.
yeah,
Okay.
and I played Benny in the show.
Oh wow! See, you learn something new every day.
Yeah,
That's
but
cool.
it was very popular with everyone. The show itself, not
Right.
not specifically me, because it was sold out every night, and like legit they had to add performances, I think, because there was not enough whatever.
Wow.
But I felt like it was my worst performance ever, ever, or at least up there. It maybe not the worst performance, but it was at least up there. And the reason why is because I felt stuck. I felt stuck in a specific way that, and I wasn't seeing eye to eye with the director, and I didn't, there was no, I didn't feel like I was being guided enough in the production.
Did you sort of feel like you weren't able to be yourself?
I didn't know what he wanted.
Okay. I'm trying to circle back to your first point of theater being a place where you can be yourself. But also, there's the challenge because actors are taught to make choices. And if they're not allowed to make choices, then they're not doing their
And that's
job.
what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm trying to relate for that. Like, I didn't know how to do it because every single acting choice I made, it was not to what he wanted.
Okay.
So I felt stuck, and to that I felt like it was a poor performance. But then again, you kind of reflect on it and you go through. Not to say that there's anything wrong and that he's a bad director, but was it a director for me? No.
No.
Because
and as an actor and a performer, you're gonna get directors that you work well with and directors you don't work well. I know.
Yeah.
I have directors I do not work well with. And it really stinks because, like, for me, I want it to be the best it can be. And, like, I'm a very collaborative person. So I really try.
Yeah.
But at the end, like, when you reflect on experiences, it's just like, no, I can't work with this person because of XYZ, and you have your reasons. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people get worried about that, and a part of my mission as a director is to cultivate a community that is not based in fear of never getting hired again, or not based in fear of not getting hired because you're not good enough,
Right.
or you don't have, like, the potential, or not, and fear based that the director or people are going to talk about you and then not cast you. Like, that's not cool. That is not cool. So I'm trying, me specifically in terms of that side of the arts and performance and that hat I wear, I try to cultivate that community where it's like, listen, this is how it goes. I'm on your side at your audition. I want you to do well. It's not about your talent or your technique. It's about if you fit the puzzle piece of my vision.
Right.
And please don't take it personally, because it's not. You're a lovely person. If I know them. If I don't know you, I don't know you. It's just, please don't take it personally. It was really nice to meet you. I hope I can find a role for you in the future. Like, and even working with people, like, I after casting, you kind of get a sense of who they are more. And if there's diva, there's diva. And then I'm like, okay, I'm never working with them again, and I make that decision for myself. But it's no hard feelings. Like, maybe it's just not a match for them either. Like, again, not personal on the other person. Like, don't take it personally.
Yeah, it's I think that's also it's hard because, like, people, like, in the arts are like, oh, I wanted the role.
Yeah, I know. They're
that was mine.
Actors is such a specific type of person. They're so insecure, but they're like, look at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. No, I'm just making a joke.
I know.
But it's just
I got it. It's like,
no, because they're yeah. But anyway.
Well, Jonathan, do you have any last words to say?
Just be kind to people.
Yeah.
And, again, like, this is going back to my whole journey, my whole mission. Be kind to people. Know that there are other people going through any sort of situations, are going to maybe the same situations that you are. And they may not say it to you. They may not be vocal about it to anyone else. But, know that there's always ways to be inclusive to people. Don't think about the outside book as the whole text of that person. Give people a chance. They may not be something on the outside when you first meet them, but they might be so much more on the inside.
That's really beautiful. Yeah.
And also, check out An Artist's Way of Healing. Again, www.anartistwayofhealing.com. I don't want to advertise myself on someone else's podcast, but
No,
I
you
just
gotta.
we were
Please
just
do.
talking about like everything that kind of this podcast goes so hand in hand with what I do, and if I can just affect one person,
Yeah.
like I just want to do it.
That's what I always say.
So
If I could just make one person feel less lonely, that's it. I've done my job.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if you have an idea, I just want to say also, if you have an idea, or if you have a passion for something, never, ever, 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 ever let someone else tell you that you should not do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's a part of you, whether
Be-
you realize it or not.
Be you. Do you. See whatever it is. And if it fails, whatever.
You tried. You
Like-
actually. There's more regret in not trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, if my life or someone else's life is that much important to you, then wouldn't you want that person to succeed and be something more? Because then that kind of goes in hand of you want them, if they're that close to you, you want to see something great from them. Don't feel like just because someone has something that is more than what you have, that's okay. And from what someone actually told me, if you listen to the podcast episode with Jet Tolentino, who's a Broadway producer, commercial producer, he said that just because someone has 3 Tonys and a Grammy, or they have 1,000 Tonys, or they have they're constantly getting booked jobs, that's their path. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your path is going to be any less. It just means that that's not your path. Your path is something else, and it'll probably be just as great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, 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 really good words.
Yeah,
from you.
I
Yeah.
really inspire, and that's
And
why I
him.
cannot actually take that for
Yeah.
me, and that was not my quote, but it's
Yeah.
something that anybody who's learning, it's like that's something that I also want to add on top and fulfill in myself. That if it's not my path, and if it's someone else's,
Yeah.
be happy for them. Say I'm happy for you, and hope them the best,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
then
yeah.
just take your own path.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for being on this episode of the Sweet Madness podcast. I had a great time talking with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you again. If you guys have any questions for the Sweet Madness podcast, you can click on the link in the show notes. Our last episode of the season is going to be a Q&A episode, so get those questions in as soon as possible if you would like it answered on the podcast. Don't worry, I keep everything. I'm going to keep all your questions, and if there's enough, we may do more. And also make sure to like, subscribe, rate the Sweet Madness podcast. It's literally how we grow here. It's how we know what you want to hear more of with us. And also there's merch. Go to amandamontoni.com to the store. We got Sweet Madness merch. Yeah, guys, there's sweet things always happening in the madness, and I hope you guys have a great, great rest of your day, wherever you are, whatever you're going through. Have a good one, and thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you for having me on.
guys.
Bye.